happy to have you back. Jim's operating out from the car today, so we'll be hopefully he'll be able to stick around with us. If not, that's okay. Welcome to the True Leadership Show. All three of us are here today. My name is Chris Tice. I'll be your host today, where we discuss all things leadership, not just some organizational things here and there, and better have your meeting this way, better have your meeting that way. No, this is all things life. This is all things marriage and kids and business and organizations and clubs and churches and ourselves. Because if you can be true to yourself, you can be true to others. And that's something that we really talk about a lot on this show, because we want you to do just that. We want you to be true to yourself. We want you to be authentic and genuine and all these different topics we've been talking about. Speaking of topics we've been talking about, today's is leaders are rational. Now, I jump right into it today a little bit without going into the past, because something that comes up all the time is when our thoughts, and we're speaking to the self first, our thoughts can determine our actions. I say this all the time. What you say to yourself is what you can end up saying to others. Or you're hiding it, which then makes you disingenuous. Which is why I brought up genuineness and authentic, because in our Leaders Are series, we've talked about all these different words of what leaders are. And I've been around a lot of amazing leaders where I've learned so much from. And sometimes we have this unfortunate ability to look at certain situations, certain things, or even some people in our own minds, try to take control. And we start to think a little irrational. It starts to take us off our game. And so, Mike, I'm going to kick it to you because Jim had to hop off, which it's okay. We know what's going on.
Process of elimination.
Well, we got to have some fun, right? Leaders are fun. Talked about this. So anyways, Mike, when you think about rational and irrational leadership in the self, now keep in mind, everybody, Mike hosts the True Man podcast, where he really does talk about being a true man, what that means to rise up. And yes, ladies, this will apply to you as well. But Mike, when you're thinking about your thoughts and we're thinking rationally, how much more effective are we in not just leading ourselves, but also leading others? However, right now we are going to speak more to the self.
Well, I think it's important. This is such an interesting, at first when you said, well, we're going to talk about being rational, I was like, wow, that's not a word you think about too often. At least I don't. And so, when I started diving into it, I'm like, wow, this is a great little word, really, when you start peeling back the onion. And really, one of the interesting things that really first came to my mind was self-control to a large degree. This ability to be self-aware and have some self-control and be rational. It's interesting. I think the more as I mature, right, as I mature in my infinite wisdom, this whole idea of being rational and being a fact checker per se, and understanding the world around me seems to be much more important. So especially coming back from a trip from a foreign country where the pace of life was drastically different than what I commonly notice here in the States. Things just didn't go as fast. Now, I was over there driving on the wrong side of the road, right? Which is an interesting experience, by the way. When you've been driving for 40 some odd years, your mind, I can hop in a car with ease and not worry about what's happening on the right side of the car, right? But over there, I was really worried about what was happening on the left side of the car, because I was driving on the right side of the car, and my whole vision was out of whack the whole time. Not to mention the roads are about an inch wide. So it really took a lot of self-control and self-awareness about what was going on around me. But what I noticed more than anything about what was going on over there was that the speed limit max might have been, this cracks me up, 80 kilometers an hour per hour, whatever that translates to here in this country, or 120, which I think was 75 miles per hour, by the way. But what was interesting was just how much awareness and rationale everybody had on the roadways down there compared to here. I mean, it was actually really nice to drive. I mean, there wasn't like craziness going on. And, so that this is an interesting conversation to come back to, having just experienced a different country that had a completely different pace of life than we sometimes do here in the United States. It was just slow. And here's what I really like, Chris. When you were coming into an area where you needed to slow down, their sign said calming area ahead.
Oh, oh, I like that.
Yeah. And at first it threw me off, and then I was like calming. Like you just immediately felt better about the whole situation. So, but that's part of being rational, right? It's
Yes.
part of being rational. Rational is really executing and being calm and thinking through things factually.
Well, and something where I want to come back right to where you started was you said, it's not necessarily a word that would have just been first to come to mind. And
Mm-mm.
honestly, very rarely is. Why? Because how often do you may hear that person's a rational thinker, especially if they're a thought leader or somebody who can be very philosophical. The thing is, the time that it comes in is at the wrong time. You're being so irrational right now.
Yeah, right.
Oh, that leader's he's so irrational. He's just irate and mad
True.
all the time. It's like,
Yeah.
stop it before it happens. And it's coming right to what you just said at the end there. I love this, by the way. Thank you, other countries, for sharing this with us, because we're going to use it. I'll find out who to credit later. Is the calming area. Before
Yeah.
you get your irrational, be rational. Slow it down. Wow, Mike, what an analogy. By the way, no, this is literally the second time Mike and I have talked today, and it wasn't about the show, other than me giving him the topic, which that is a claim to fame that holds true every time. These are, yes, we have the titles picked out, and that's it. We talk, and that's the great thing about being a rational person, and being especially a rational leader. As an example, when I'm thinking about myself and my own, I'll tell you what, I used to not be as calming down prior to when the stop point had to hit. It was just all gas, no brakes. And I could slam through some attitude in a very irrational manner. I'm not proud of this, but I was known as a short fuse.
Yeah.
And it took some other leaders in my life to shepherd me on and say, listen, stop and think. Stop and think. It goes back to things that grandma always said, if it's not gonna be nice, don't say it at all, right? And me, I was just like, blah, and then people are like, you're just so irrational all the time, you miss this and you miss that. Oh, and this was very early on. I mean, this was when I was in high school. So luckily enough, there were some rational thinkers and some rational leaders that would hit a calming zone with me and get me to understand, if you just stop for a minute, take in the whole situation, you'll be a better leader to other people. And so when we get irrational, we get irate, things just start to fall apart. So Mike, speak a little bit into this about the opposite of being rational. What are the things and the consequences and the things we can run into by being an irrational leader? Or if you have, and it'd be your own, but specific examples that you've heard of out there, where we just look at it and go, man, if they would have just hit the calming zone for just a second before slamming on the brakes and then hitting the gas, we wouldn't be
Yeah.
in this situation.
Yeah. I may be implementing this phrase into some of the things I do. I enjoyed it so much. It's funny when you hear that word calm, what it actually does to you. It's just like it triggers something right in your brain. But when you become quote unquote irrational, or you lose your temper, or you get angry, and I was in the same boat you were, Chris. And I've tried to be better about that, because your immediate reaction sometimes isn't always your best reaction, especially when it relates to anger. And I'm not saying that there aren't certain points where anger isn't good. I mean, sometimes things happen and you just have to blow off a little steam. But I think I probably am in the same boat you are, Chris. It's one thing when you do it in the privacy of a room or something like that, but when it affects other people, now all of a sudden, um, things can really get sideways, right? Your attitude, how you phrase things, what you say. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube sometimes when some things are said. And, I'm, I'm not going to get into a political conversation, but I do have some pretty strong opinions about things. And sometimes I come across something and, it's like a reflex. It just comes out of my mouth. And my wife will commonly say to me, keep it in your head, you know, and there's still a lot of improvement, right?
We all do.
that needs to happen. But in many respects, I've tried to be better about it. And these are not easy things to do because they become ingrained in you over time, and so it's not good. And then people sometimes they come to know you in that way, and that's not good either. And so you carry a little bit of a reputation, and sometimes that reputation might not be what you like it to be, because of the way you act or the things that you say. And if you're going to be a good leader in life, you have to be aware of that, and you have to be rational, and do the things that people you want people to be attracted to you as a leader. That's how you build trust. That's how you build winning teams and organizations. And so, being a rational, calming person, I have to say, I'm coming back fresh from a couple of weeks, over in London and Ireland, and I feel pretty calm right now. But, nothing too crazy's happened today, so there's probably still time. But, but when you have a little downtime and an opportunity to, see some of the beautiful things that God created in the world, it's interesting to me, Chris, I was in buildings, Westminster Abbey, for one. Westminster Abbey is older than the United States of America. There are people buried in Westminster Abbey that are older than the United States of America. And I got to tell you, that gives you, when you see that stuff or you're in buildings that are older than the United States of America, you step back for a minute and go, wow, what's going on here? And it really gives you ample time to think about what's going on in your life and in the world, and as you as a leader, and how you can impact and affect the world. At least it did for me.
Well, and what I love about that, Mike, is you took the time to appreciate where you were and what you were a part of in that moment. I mean, I even think just about a month ago, almost 2 months ago now, I was in Washington, D.C. We walked by Ford's Theater, which sent chills down my spine. And then, standing on some of those roads and some of those avenues and being by the White House, it wasn't just the essence of what I see today. I was picturing what it was like when George Washington was, riding his horse down that road, or, or Thomas Jefferson, or, Abe Lincoln, or, whoever, even Ronald Reagan, riding in the limousine, whatever.
Yeah.
And when we take the time to think clearly, now this does become a skill. And actually, I was re-looking at my list when I looked away, and one of the things that leaders do is they take the time to develop themselves and develop what's going on around them. They also take the time to train on different things. They listen to one another. And so, speaking to what Mike was talking about leaders who are the type that are irrational, you have that negative connotation, you have that negative reputation. It's okay to turn around and say, I don't want to be like this. I did that. I would not be the leader today that I am now if it hadn't been for those who spoke into me. So one, if you're a leader, or excuse me, as a leader, you see that happening, talk with them, work it out, communicate. This literally goes back over half of what we've talked about this year. And we are at the halfway point of this list. and halfway through the year, ironically enough, because it's a 52-week list. We're going to go a little over because we had some pauses there because I didn't think about holidays. That's on me. But that's the thing is when I look at some of these, I was around some leaders for a while and I was a part of it because I had integrated into the system. We talk about those that you're closest to, one or two things. Either you're going to change them or they're going to change you. One way or another, there's going to be an assimilation that happens. And some leaders I was around for quite a while, even though they were great leaders, they did a lot of great work for so many people. One of the things though was, man, they had a short fuse. Hot-tempered, hot-headed, and the reputation preceded them. And what everybody said was, it's okay because it's just the way they are. Let them cool down, and then it'll be all right. Why don't you cool down before the cool down has to happen? Think rationally. Don't get me wrong. Like Mike even just said, in my own case, I'm sure there's going to be some more snaps in life. It's not uncommon sometimes, but the point is working to be better, and a rational leader does that. A rational leader stops and starts to think, how does this impact my own thoughts? And how is this going to impact others people's thoughts? How is this going to impact the direct results that we're looking for? Is this going to be good or is this going to be bad? When I once said a while back, and I think we've talked about it on here. If not, we're getting ready to. I once said that anyone can be a leader. And, a lot of people agreed with me. And then I was on a show where we were talking about this very thing. And one of the co-hosts, he stepped in. He goes, Chris, let me understand you correctly. You said anyone can be a leader. I said, yeah. He goes, what do you say about the ones who shouldn't have been? I said, no, whatever. I said, can be a leader. And he stopped. He goes, so, the Hitlers and, all these in life and everything. I said, listen, they got followers. I'm not saying it's right, but they did. They were a leader. They're the wrong leader. And they definitely were not rational thinkers. The thing is, we don't stop for just a moment in society and say, instead of just going, well, they're an irrational person. No, let's build rationalities. Let's make a change in this. Let's change our own generational guidelines. That's one thing I tell my kids all the time. Be better than me. Like, Daddy, what do you mean? I want to do this. I want to do that. You can do that. Do it better than me. Be a better dad than I am. Please. Be a better husband than I am, or spouse. I mean, I have a daughter, so obviously that's not there. But, be a better spouse than I am. Be better than mommy if that's the way you want to go with it. And my wife and I have agreed that's what we want. And as leaders, we should want the same thing, especially if we're thinking rationally. So, Mike, what are some of the implications and impacts, positively influences we can have by being more rational thinkers, and how we can create or innovate, because we talked about leaders as innovators, a better lifestyle and a better world? And I know we're trying to stay away from politics because right now we got some leaders that are not thinking very rationally, but it's going to come up. So how can we make this better?
Well, part of the problem with politics in this country in general, and globally for that matter, really is this inability to, part of being rational is being a good listener. Now, I may not necessarily agree with everything that you say, but, in so many areas, politically speaking, I guess, is everything 100% accurate on either side of the aisle on any topic? No. Is there wiggle room there? But can we sit, if we're looking at the facts, whatever the facts may be, there's a lot of irrational things going on that people come up with nowadays. And to be honest with you, I think a lot of it's not done because that's what people really believe. I think that they're, trying to go viral on, social media or whatever and make a name for themselves that way. But that's short-lived. That's not long-term thinking. And, but I really feel like that being a rational person means that you're going to be considerate of what somebody else thinks. Whether you agree with it or not, you can at least sit and be open to the idea. And can we meet in the middle someplace? And by that, I mean, can we really have a legitimate conversation? you know, and, I did a podcast a while back, and the podcast was with a gentleman who's completely atheist. Now, I struggled with whether I should even go on. I decided to go on, but there was there was really nothing that I could say that he wasn't going to try to pick apart. And at a certain point, I just kind of almost shut up at certain questions, because it was just a little painful, but I didn't get angry with it. I listened to what he was trying to say, and quite honestly, I'm not well versed enough to get into that kind of argument. And that's exactly what it would have amounted to if I would have really tried to say, no, you're wrong.
Yeah.
Did he make me think about some things? Yeah, absolutely. He did. Um, did it change my view of things? No. But, he made me think. And I got to say, I'm finding tremendous value in being able to sit and discern and think about things, whether I think they're right or they're wrong. And it may strengthen my opinion on something, or in some cases, it my opinion may not be as strong as a result of what I've heard. But the thing that concerns me most, and I think this is, I'm going to say about this country at this point, is the lack of rational thinking, the ability to discern and have decent human conversations where we love one another, whether we agree or not. And for whatever reason, it feels like, to me, we're going through a season where there's not a lot of that going on as a whole. Pockets, yes. As a whole, no. We're putting too many silos around everything. And it's destructive behavior leading to irrational things happening in our culture. And quite honestly, it's a little painful.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, and it's just not that hard to have a conversation. It doesn't have to be. You talked about this gentleman that you spoke with, and it's like, we all come from different backgrounds. There's different diversities, different cultures, different ways we're raised, different things that happen. And yeah, there's been some times I've been in some heated discussions where if any one person would have been just a little more rational in the moment, we could have stopped. Some of us might still be talking because some of us are not talking anymore. And it negates being able to come to the table and just have a conversation with one another.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that we're missing in our world leaders and our government, our national leaders here, state and local too. I think it's being missed in church. I know it's being missed in organizations. I see it all the time where different
Yeah.
people, well, I want this agenda and I want that. Well, this has to be done this way and this has to be done that way. And I'm assigning this that way. Well, but I thought it should be this. Come to the table and talk about it. Now, if you're the top leader, you do have the responsibility and in some cases liability to say, no, this is how it's getting done. And that's what I want done. Okay, that's fine. And sometimes you got to kind of accept that. If you don't absolutely like it, well, make a decision and stick by it. The thing is take the time. Mike used a very important word in there, discernment. Take the time to discern, which ironically enough, thank you, Mike, for this intro and segue into next week.
I don't
We're
even have the
going to be
list.
talking about leaders are discerners. It's having that discernment. It's having that rational thought process. So that way, when my words come out, they're more rational. Mike talked about how his wife goes, Mike, Mike.
It actually comes out, Michael.
Oh, you get the Michael. Okay. I always got the Christopher Dean. So, and that was grandma. My wife does it every now and again. So every now and again, I kind of feel this hand on my arm, like it's time for you to cool off, or coming back full circle to the kickoff, hit your calm down zone.
Yeah.
because it happens, and that's okay. I get it. I mean, the Bible says that, that there's plenty of anger in the Bible. It says, while
Mm.
you're angry, do not sin. It's okay that we're angry, but apply some rationality to what you're doing or what you're thinking before you say it.
Yeah.
Stop and think. Is this going to be productive? Is this going to be helpful? Or is it just going to cause an argument that now just waste a bunch of time and nobody gets anything out of it positively? Too many times, too many leaders step back or don't step back, excuse me, and just take a look at the whole picture for even just that second. Take that breath. Come up to the calm down zone before you hit the gas. That way, maybe you'll hit the brakes instead. That was what I meant to say earlier, by the way. Take that time. Take that minute. It's okay to do. I promise you, it really is. Look at the full situation and assess it. Mike, a prime example of how to handle what he handled for his podcast episode. I could have done this, and this. What would it have caused? Might have caused a bunch of angst and anger in a show that doesn't come out. We don't know for sure because, in my opinion, Mike did the right thing. Great leadership. He listened.
He was trying to light me up.
Well, and people are going to do that, folks. People are going to, especially when you're in leadership, especially when you're hosting something or you're in charge of something. There are going to be those out there that are just going to try and light you up because they're irrational. Don't let irrationalities around you, whether it be your own thoughts, what you're thinking other people are thinking, or what they're saying about you, control you in what you're going to do. Control the thoughts, control the actions, control the words, and you will get a more positive outcome. There may still be some negative things that happen. That's okay. It's going to happen. That's just the way it is sometimes. But you are ultimately in control. And that's what a rational person does. They bring rationale to the situation, to themselves. Mike, closing thoughts from you, and how do we get a hold of you?
Yeah, so get a hold of me at mike@truemanlifecoaching.com. You can check out the True Man podcast also on my website, truemanlifecoaching.com, or any one of your favorite podcast channels. I guess my final thought would be, and I'm speaking from experience and really from myself. Maybe it's because I'm still sitting in the calming zone here. I don't know. I love that idea. We're going to use this, Chris.
We are going to use it. It's coming up more than once.
Just execute with calmness in your life, and rationale, and don't be afraid just because you believe one side or another. Don't be afraid to investigate. What's going on the opposite side of things. You may learn a thing or two that you didn't know about, and I think we need more of that.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I really do. Thank you, Mike, for that. I was sitting back as I was thinking of my concluding remarks for today, and just listening to so many people who have been successful. And I'm not just talking financially. However, many of them are very successful financially. And when I listen to their stories, or I listen to when people ask them the very question, like, what are some of those pivotal moments in your life where you just saw the change happen? And almost always one of the first things they say is when I learned to slow it down and look at it. Don't get me wrong. There are times, hit the gas. You got phone calls to make, or you got, a time stamp to get done. Okay. Yes, there are those times. They said in the best, calmest moments were when my best ideas came to life, or when the development of the ideas came to life. And it was when I started thinking rationally about all the possibilities and the imagination that could come true from this. They said when it was all the can'ts and all the, you won't be able to do this, you won't be able to do that, because it's what other people are saying to them, or now they're saying it to themselves, I can't do this, I can't do that, nothing gets done. That's irrational thinking. That's irrational processing. Then they slowed it down for just that second to take that breath, to have those difficult conversations, or to have that meeting, or to have that training, or to have that idea and have it to start come to life. That was when the, if you will, magic happened. That's when they really started to see things come together. It's when they started viewing the whole pictures. And it came from a point of rationality. What is the rational way to handle this? What is the rational way to take care of this? That's why leaders are rational. If you're struggling in any of this, you're wanting to know more, you want to set up a time to talk, your organization, have a training, have a speaking, you can reach out to me, Chris Tice. That's Chris at EagleFireEnrichment.com. I created Eagle Fire Enrichment for that very purpose as a leadership solutions company. You can also check out my website, www.eaglefireenrichment.com. Would love to set up a time to chat with you all anytime that we can. I love having these discussions. I'm so grateful that Mike is back and back safely, by the way. Thank you, Mike. So glad to have you here, sir. We know Jim couldn't join us fully. He had some things going on. No big deal. It happens. We will be back next week talking about leaders are, how did I have it written? Discerning. I said discerners early. Leaders are discerning. So it's going to stem a lot from this conversation and many others that we have had. But until next week, we look forward to seeing you all. As always, if you'd like to be a guest on the show, let us know. Let any one of us know. We'll get you hooked up. Would love to have you on, have you a part of the conversation. Have your best day ever by making every day great. Remember, you can't never did. God bless us all. See you next week.
Take care.